People come to church, especially this church, for many different reasons. So what exactly gave you the motivation to set an alarm, get dressed, drive to this building on Parker Road, or log on to our Discord channel in your pajamas? Some of us come here seeking peace, an hour a week to just breathe a little bit and think about something bigger than your to-do list. Some come seeking truth, however they define that. When you're looking for big answers, it's helpful to be around other people who are also asking big questions, especially when they are courageous enough to recognize truths that challenge our prejudices and make us uncomfortable. It's good for us to be uncomfortable. Some of us come for community, for that place where we don't have to pretend to believe things that we don't, where we don't have to keep our mouths shut or dress like someone that we're not, or pretend to be okay when we're not. For a group of people who prop each other up, bring meals, give rides, and celebrate each other's victories. The marvelous thing about Unitarian Universalism is that we come from all these different places, all these different reasons, with many different understandings of the sacred, and all of our different melodies swirl together. And instead of being cacophony, we create a symphony. Thank you so much for being an instrument in our symphony this morning. We have a really special guest speaker this morning. Speaking of instruments, his vocal instrument is tremendous, and you will get to enjoy that in a little bit. This is Cameron Young, who is our congregational life leader for the Southern region. Cameron uses they, them pronouns. Cameron is a lifelong Texan and Unitarian Universalist, currently serving, recently promoted to, may I say, lead of the Southern region, as I said. Before assuming the position as lead, Cameron worked as field staff for the region since 2019, so many of you have seen them around, leading worship, leading workshops. They've preached here a few times. Before joining the UUA, Cameron served as a lifespan religious educator in Fort Worth, Texas. Cameron has a Bachelor of Music from Louisiana State University and a Master of Divinity at Bright Divinity School, where they graduated summa cum laude and received the Sexual and Gender Justice Certificate and the prestigious Walker Preaching Scholarship. They are currently a candidate for UU ministry. Yay! Full confession, I had an old bio, so I didn't know they'd finished seminary. So congratulations. A professional musician and classically trained singer, Cameron has performed in numerous operas and musicals, is a member and co-founder of the singing group Uptown Carolers, and recorded with Grammy Award winner Leon Bridges in his debut album. In their spare time, Cameron is an avid traveler, a diehard fan of DFW sports teams, and a devoted coffee drinker, and I am with them there. We raise our iced coffee glasses. Coffee, coffee, coffee. Bring who you are as you enter our church this morning. Bring your best self and your struggling self. Bring your mistakes and your triumphs. Bring your shortcomings and your recommitment to good. Bring yourself here and open your heart to beauty, to truth, to the door that is open to the presence of the sacred. Here in this church, we are trying to walk together in the peaceable way, trying to hammer out division and hatred and all that separates one from another. We try, and we will fall short, but held in love, we try again. We come together this morning as a church to bow our heads in prayer, to raise our voices in song, to remember our promises and vow to live by them once again. Our chalice lighting this morning is by Jami Yandle, and the chalice will be lit by Donne Rolfes.
We light this flame to ignite the sacred power of justice. We light this flame so that it may be a beacon of hope in moments of uncertainty, fear, anxiety, and the unknown. We light this flame and are emboldened by its blaze. Knowing our strength as prophetic and powerful people is rooted in the diverse ways we answer the call of love.
A covenant is the sacred promise that we make with one another about the way that we will walk together as a community, as a congregation. Please join me as we remind ourselves of this promise. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another.
A reading from the prophet James Baldwin. He tells us, ancient maps of the world, when the earth was flat, inform us concerning that void where America was waiting to be discovered. Here be dragons. Dragons may not have been here then, but they are certainly here now, breathing fire, belching smoke. Or to be less literary and biblical about it, attempting to intimidate the morals and morality of this particular and peculiar time and place. Not since this country is the issue of the entire globe and is also the most powerful nation currently to be found on it, are we speaking only of this time and place. And it can be said that the monumental struggles being waged in our time, and not only in this place, resemble in awesome ways the ancient struggles between those who insisted that the world was flat and those who apprehended that it was round. So I'm really glad the news of the men's U.S. Olympic hockey team and the women's was announced this morning, because I was about to announce it myself. If anything can make me feel just an ounce of patriotism these days, it's global sports. And I still can feel conflicted, as Baldwin tells us. We have a complicated relationship with ours being the most powerful nation on earth. So James Baldwin's essay, Here Be Dragons, originally titled Freaks in the Ideal of American Manhood, was published just about 2 years before his death in 1987. It was one of the famed author and civil rights advocate's most explicit writings on his own queer sexuality. While he oft writes about his Black identity and race relations in America, and was open about his identity as a gay man, he generally just alluded to it far more subtly, particularly in his novels. Dragons, which intimidate the mores, morals, and morality of this particular and peculiar time and place. Those strange people that society teaches its children to fear as deviants, notably for testing the boundaries of social constructs like gender and sexuality. Many of those folks who go on to become prophets and martyrs. As Unitarian Universalists, our faith calls us to be that beacon for new revelation and new ways of living, and feel that tension as though it is, in the words of Baldwin, the ancient struggle between those who insisted the world was flat and those who apprehended that it was round. Now, these days, it often feels like the flat earthers, both literal and figurative, feels like they're winning, doesn't it? What to do? What to do? In this essay, Baldwin, a New Yorker, discusses coming of age in Greenwich Village in the 1940s, the community that would 20 years later play host to the Stonewall riots. It had already become something of an underground community for queer folks at this point. Baldwin discusses beginning to come to terms with his sexuality in the village, but still grappling with these intense feelings of isolation on account of being one of the very few Black people in that neighborhood. Disillusioned with America, Baldwin would leave for Paris in 1948, 21 years before Stonewall. Nevertheless, his fingerprints on them in that community remained. Now, it behooves us to never forget the first Pride parade wasn't a parade, it was a riot. Martin Luther King told us that rioting is the language of the unheard, and that this was a community who'd previously had no voice. June 28th, 1969. A decade after the end of the McCarthy era, where hundreds of government officials, thousands of military members, and many more blacklisted for suspected homosexual activity. Police raids of gay establishments continued to be widespread all over the country. In New York, they happened almost weekly. Those without identification and those dressed in drag would be arrested. Those deemed male wearing anything feminine, and those deemed female who didn't wear at least 3 feminine items of clothing. Additionally, the women would be shuffled into restrooms and forced to prove their sex to a female officer. Undercover cops would also frequently visit these establishments in similar areas to entrap suspected gay men into sexual or romantic situations and then arrest them. Take a moment to sit with all that. Now, this was against the backdrop of many emerging gay rights movements in America. Many of these movements, however, were quite assimilationist. They were often composed of mostly white men dressed respectably who refused to hold hands. So often today in our own spaces, we claim to seek diversity, but only if it's palatable or respectable. These early movements garnered very little press attention and were often quite ineffective. Now, in hindsight, it had become readily apparent that this movement needed to be both more intersectional, so people from a broader range of identities, and possibly more forceful. It was time for the dragons to come out. And they did on that summer Saturday night at the Stonewall Inn. Now, many of these events of that night are disputed as legends are wont to be, but there's quite a few things we know for certain. The police, part of the Public Morals Squad, raided the bar at 1:20 a.m., barring the doors from anyone leaving. The bar and its patrons were used in these raids, but this time they collectively did something more unusual. They refused to comply with the various demands for identification. A crowd of 150 or so, seeing the commotion, also began to gather outside the bar, many of them trans folks and homeless queer youth. Officers decided to arrest the non-compliant patrons en masse via paddy wagons, but some decided to fight back, especially the drag queens, trans men, and butch lesbians. They would ultimately barricade themselves inside the stone wall. Pennies were being thrown as a representation of how the cops would usually request payoffs, followed by beer bottles, then garbage cans, then rocks, then finally bricks. The police would try to load their wagons only for them to get overturned and their tires slashed. One of my favorite images is of numerous eyewitness accounts of drag queens forming kicking routines a la the chorus line, spontaneously being formed to taunt police. Eventually, fires broke out, just as dragons breathe flames if provoked hard enough. Now, this would lead to a second night of riots, widespread organizing, and then a year later, to commemorate the anniversary, the first known Pride demonstration, which would quickly be emulated in other cities, Dallas being one of the first adopters. This was in large part thanks to the activism of trans women of color like Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, the naysayers who believe that justice movements must be passive and play respectability politics for the dominant culture should look to the Pride movement and what it's accomplished. We still got a ways to go, but how far we've come because of it is self-evident. Now, I've been to the Stonewall Inn twice, most recently last April. While the building has undergone many remodels and transitions, it now again stands as a queer bar. It's certainly posher now than it once was. It was much more grungier and grimier in its early incarnations, but it's still a profound experience, just sitting at the bar, drinking a tequila soda in the same spot my queer ancestors once drank, relishing in the very few spaces they could be authentic. And yes, the same spot where bricks were thrown so that younger generations of queers like me could live into that authenticity even more. So I am a member of the LGBTQ plus community. At 21, I came out as bisexual, and at 27, I came out as transgender, specifically non-binary. So not male, not female, both, neither. Or as that kid so eloquently put it, my shadow is purple. The second experience of coming out was much more difficult. Though people who have identified as third genders have existed since the beginning of civilization, with many cultures, particularly indigenous ones, our westernized US culture, entrenched in colonialism, is not quite there. Baldwin tells us it is not possible for the human being to be as simple as a stallion or a mare, because the human imagination is perpetually required to examine, control, and redefine reality, of which we must assume ourselves to be the center and the key. Unitarian Universalism tells us that nature and revelation are perpetually challenging each other, and this relentless tension is one of the keys to human history and what is known as the human condition. While most of us have been assigned female or male at birth, and most people feel themselves aligned with that identification, trans and non-binary people accentuate the fact that we are just still inherently androgynous beings. while many choose to repress that duality from the pressure of society, trans folks embrace it. But that doesn't mean it's easy. Well, how I present myself fluctuates between the masculine and feminine and everything in between, all of them authentic to who I am. Safety, both physical and emotional, inform my decisions of what I will look like on any given day. There are times where the dormant dragon within me is awakened and I throw caution to the wind. Other times when I just want to go about my day like a normal human being, blending in with the crowd. Presenting more masculinely, like my sex assigned at birth, offers a greater deal of safety and respect from those around me, even in progressive spaces like UU churches. This highlights not just the anti-trans bias pervasive in our society, but also the sexism that still exists. While queer people and folks from other marginalized communities often feel this tension most acutely, isn't that dance between safety and authenticity something each of us knows in some way? Isn't there a part of each soul that yearns to live more fully and yet fears being seen so clearly? Aren't there some pieces within ourselves that we've been taught to suppress by varying degrees for whatever reason? Something that if we fear revealed, society may label us as a freak. Baldwin offers wisdom for this reality. He says, freaks are called freaks and are treated as they are treated in the main, abominably, because they are human beings who cause to echo deep within us our most profound terrors and desires. Most of us, however, do not appear to be freaks, though we are rarely what we appear to be. We are part of each other. Many of my country folk appear to find this fact exceedingly inconvenient and even unfair, and so very often do I. So often society rejects these so-called freaks simply because they are holding a mirror, and what is seen in that mirror can be terrifying. Yet there is a deeper truth embedded within our faith and our theology, not only that we all have inherent worth and dignity, but that we are all beautifully different, pluralistic. Pluralism in Unitarian Universalism is not just a value, but a discipline which challenges us as a religious people to not just accept those differences in others, but accept them within ourselves. So, my friends, find that dormant dragon within you waiting to come out and challenge the unjust mores of our social order. Or as the kids may say, let your freak flag fly.
Well, our chalice this morning was self-extinguishing. But we're still going to say the words together. So please join as we extinguish our symbolic chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
God knows we want to break free of these imaginary chains that bind us and be the dragons that are within our nature. So we heard from the prophet James Baldwin, and now I leave you with a musical benediction from the saint Freddie Mercury. I want to break free. I want to break free. I want to break free from your lies. You're so self-satisfied. I don't need you. I've got to break free. God knows I want to break free. Amen.